Hello, my name is Mike. My name is Mark, and we are students of Ghana Christian International High School, and we urge you all to subscribe to HISGOV TV. Link in bio.
Hi there, you are welcome to HISGOV TV. And today I want us to look at the reasons for the fall of Dr. K.A Busia, who was the first president of the Second Republic, which was from 1969 to 1972. In our previous lessons, we looked at the economic reasons, the economic measures adopted by the Progress Party, or K.A Busia's party, to tackle the hardship and the economic problems of the country at that time. This is going to be the last lesson on the Progress Party, and then we move on to the Third Republic. We move on to the NRC before we move on to the Third Republic. So if you have not watched the previous video on the economic measures adopted by the Busia's government, I have added a link in the description, so you click and watch before you come and listen to this lesson. So, as I have already indicated, we are looking at the reasons for the fall of the Busia government. So let's take a look at our lesson objectives. So our lesson objectives for today, or for this lesson, will be that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the reasons that led to the fall of the Busia government, or that made the Busia government to become unpopular in 1972. Don't forget that Busia came to succeed Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. After Nkrumah is overthrown, it was the Busia government that took over. So let's begin with the introduction. So despite Busia's remarkable achievements in the 26 months that he spent on the seat, he was overthrown in a coup on January 13, 1972. And in this coup, it was orchestrated by Colonel Ignatius Kutu Acheampong, who is popularly known as K.A Acheampong. He overthrew the Busia regime. Now, K.A Acheampong then established the National Redemption Council, the NRC, to take over the seats of government. Now, bear in mind that at the time of Busia's overthrow, like that of Kwame Nkrumah, Busia was not in the country at that time. He was on a medical checkup in Oxford, London. And so when the coup happened, he couldn't also come back home because of what he feared for his life. Then again, K.A Acheampong, after the coup, suspended the constitution. He also dissolved parliament, and also the Progress Party was also banned from taking part in politics, and this ended our second republic because of the suspension of the constitution and, of course, parliament being dissolved and Progress Party banned. That ended our second republic. And there were quite a number of reasons given for the overthrow of K.A Busia. Of course, downfall. And if you look at the image on your right, it's a newspaper in 1972, 14 January 1972, announcing or reporting the coup against Dr. Busia. And when you look here, we have here National Redemption Council is formed, and this was the military military regime that came to overthrow the PP. And then Afrifa also here, as you have seen here being reported there, Afrifa grabbed. And don't forget that Afrifa played a very important role in the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in 1966. And so if he was also grabbed, then it was in the right direction. So let's take a look at the reasons for the overthrow of a man who is believed to be a defendant of democracy. Good. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one was Busia's disregard for certain constitutional provisions. So don't forget that in the Second Republic, the country was using the 1969 Constitution. And that was the constitution that Busia was supposed to abide by. However, he failed to ensure that certain provisions in the constitution was adhered to. I mean, for example, provisions such as ministers or government officials declaring their assets. I mean, Busia failed to do so. 26 into his, regime, quite a number of the ministers and government officials had not declared their assets. And this, the citizenry, found very, very difficult to understand why Busia did not push his people to do so. Don't forget that this is a government that came to succeed a perceived corrupt, government, and that is the Nkrumah government. We saw that some of the reasons for his overthrow was the fact that some of the ministers had amassed wealth for themselves. And so in this 1969 constitution, people were expecting K.A Busia to force his officials or his government to declare their asset, but a lot of them, or he, did not pay heed to. Again, there was, if you look at Article 61 of the 1969 Constitution, also provided that no minister of state, if you were a minister of the state, while in office, was not to hold any other office of profit, whether being, public or private, either being directly or indirectly. And this provision is still found in our 92 Constitution. If you are a minister of state, you are not supposed, you are not permitted to hold any other office again. But in 1971, in November, it was reported in the graphic that J.H. Mensah, who was then the Minister of Finance, was the director of Odumase Farms Limited, which contravened the Constitution. And so people, found it hard to comprehend that this was a man who people saw as quite a democratic man, somebody who believed in democratic principles. So they were expecting him to do more with the Constitution to ensure that some of these provisions were met. But Busia, for one or two reasons, did not do so, and so incurred the wrath of the people. And so the people also supported the coup in this regard. Good. Let me also remind you that some of these same provisions are all found in our 92 Constitution. But, our president, again, the last time I saw, I think, on the news where a pressure group was rather calling for some of these ministers and government officials to declare their asset. And this is still a problem, even in our Fourth Republic. And the next one was Busia's dismissal of 568 public servants. You recall in our previous lesson that Busia, in the 1969 Constitution, it provided for him, a provision that he could dismiss public servants based on corruption, based on inaptitude and also inefficiency. And based on this, Busia acted and dismissed 568 public servants. And that, again, did not go down well with the people. You also recall that we said that one of these public servants sent the case to court, and the court ruled in favor of E.K. Salah. But Busia, again, did not pay heed to, of course, what the court said that he should do. And so people felt very, very disappointed. People became disappointed that a whole, doctor who professed love for, democracy or democratic principles would not act on a ruling of the Supreme Court to re-employ E.K. Salah again. And so, it tinted his democratic, principles. And so people felt unhappy about what was going on in the country at that time. And so when the coup happened, people, supported the coup. The next reason for Busia's fall was his removal of the editor of the daily graphic. The apartheid system in South Africa, which Busia was, his method in dealing with that. We will talk about that in our next point, but let me just bring it here. The editor of the Daily Graphic at that time, criticized Busia for his stance on the then apartheid regime in South Africa. He took a more diplomatic stand on the issue that let us talk with them, we judge with them one-on-one, hoping that they would, or the white minority would do away with the whole, apartheid regime. Meanwhile, at that time, the whole world, the AU, African Union, had decided to isolate South Africa, from taking part in anything, world sports, anything. But here we were, Busia tried to still again had engagement with this regime, and that was, criticized by many people, not only by Ghanaians, even outsiders, our neighboring countries. And the editor of the Daily Graphic did the same, and he was removed by Busia. And so this, was seen as very unconstitutional. And this was also a man who had sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution. And so why, was he doing this? So people felt that it was an attempt to stifle press, freedom. And so Busia's government drew quite a lot of condemnation from the press, and a lot, meaning Ghanaians, who, of course, wanted to see freedom of speech exercise in the country at that time. And so this next reason, Busia's advocacy of dialogue with South Africa, is what I just explained. It is in relation with his removal of the editor of the daily graphic. So as I had already said, the apartheid. So like somebody who asked, what was the apartheid system or regime in South Africa like? The apartheid over there was more or less like segregation or separation. So basically the blacks majority were taken from, the cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town, and they were taken to a remote area known as Soweto. So if you wanted to come from Soweto as a black man to the cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town, which had been occupied by the white, then you needed a passbook, like a passport. So they give you a number of days to spend either in Johannesburg or in Cape Town, in any of the white, cities. And there were some schools that blacks could not go, some hospitals that black could not go. Even on the lovers' bench, you could see that they reserve some part for black. You see a poster there, black only, white only. You can Google on the apartheid system in South Africa, and you will know more. So basically, that was what was happening. The minority in South Africa, the white minority, was ruling and oppressing the black majority over there. And at that time, the world wanted South Africa to end that treatment, that regime, and allow election to take place so that the people, everybody could be involved. But the minority, government in South Africa was not ready to listen. And so the whole world decided to isolate, South Africa from so many things. But Busia decided to, dialogue with them when everybody was against them. Like, don't talk to him. Then you realize that one person is standing there talking to him. Everybody's going to mad. It's going to be mad at him. And so this drew quite a lot of condemnation, not from Africa, from the local front alone, but also from the, outside, everybody was condemning. And that also tainted his image, as if he was supporting, the regime. But maybe that was not the case, as we may see it. And this could also be a reason for his overthrow. Good. Let's look at the next point for his overthrow. Again, Busia's introduction of student loan scheme was also became a problem. You know, during Nkrumah's regime, tertiary education was free. I mean, everything was virtually free. Your feeding, I mean, your maintenance, your books, your school fees, even accommodation, everything was virtually free. But then when he was overthrown and then Busia came, he introduced the student loan scheme in 1971. And so under this loan scheme, what happened was that students were for the first time, or university students were for the first time going to contribute to their own maintenance of what they called maintenance charges, whereas the government would take care of the tuition. Okay, so like I have already indicated, Nkrumah gave free 100% feeding everything. But under Busia's regime, he said that the government was only going to take the tuition, okay, take care of the tuition. I mean, whereas the students would also, maintain themselves or cater for themselves. And most students and parents were not happy with this loan scheme, because they felt that the government was trying to avoid his responsibility of educating his citizens. If somebody had done it, why are you now coming to change it? And so that was the issue, of course, between both students at that time and also parents. So this could be linked to, of course, what happened during Mohammed's regime, whereby he said that I'm going to scrap the teacher and nursing training allowance or whatever, and then you go for loan. And then people were mad at him, and that even cost him a lot of vote, and that could be a reason why people even voted against the then, of course, government NDC, John Mahama, because of what he decided to do, because the opposition said, I'll restore it. And he had scrapped it off. And so that, also was against Busia's, Busia's government. Okay, and I don't blame him for that, because at that time you could see that things were not well. The economy needed money, and so that. So let's look at the next one. He also again introduced the National Development Levy, which sought to mobilize fund for developmental projects. And this people saw as a wrong timing, because at that time, workers were already suffering. And so if you bring in a new levy or tax, that was going to overburden the working population. And so a lot of people kicked against that. And so, it made them uncomfortable. And more so, the situation came to an end, to a head, when the government on September 10th, 1971, passed the Industrial Relations Act, as the amendment in 1971, which dissolved the TUC as the central organ of labor movement. So the TUC was dissolved as the central organ of labor movement. And so the workers at that time felt that Busia was being an anti, like he didn't like, of course, the workers to express their opinions and co. So these things, as I've already said, are still being, are still happening. Remember, with the introduction of the e-levy by the current president, people were still against it, that we are not in normal times. People are suffering. Things are not well. Businesses are collapsing, and yet you want to introduce a new levy, that will even make things worse. And so, basically, these, remote reasons will definitely go, against you as a government. Then the next one was his introduction of the Aliens, of course, Compliance Order of 1972. Don't also forget that in our previous lesson, we said that this Alien Compliance Order was introduced by the Busia government in order to protect the local businesses or local industries. Because when Busia came to office, he saw that there were a lot of illegal foreigners who were engaging in all sort of trade. The economy actually was in the hands of foreigners. And Busia wanted to change that trend. And so this Alliance Compliance Order of 1972 was introduced so that all illegal immigrants, he gave them certain time to go and look for legal papers, or else they will all be deported back to their country. And that happened. But the issue about that was that even though it was a good, policy with good intentions, what happened was that the police that carried out the order, they did it in an inhuman, manner, in a very obnoxious manner. It even led to the loss of lives of these foreigners and also some properties. And so, as Ghanaians, as we are so sympathetic. So even the citizenry, some of the citizenry at that time felt, they put themselves in the shoes of these foreigners, and even criticized the government for carrying out the whole issue as it went, because people died, people's of course property, was lost, and most importantly, some of the countries that were affected, like Burkina Faso, Upper Volta, by then, Togo, and Nigeria, they all condemned the actions of the government as at that time. And so this made the PP, or the Progress Party, unpopular, both internationally and also on the local front. Then the next one was the devaluation of the cedi. And this policy, it seems almost all the government tried to do that. And as I said earlier, I don't see the reason in that, because when you devalue that, of course, currency, and you are still importing, don't forget that there is going to be high cost of living in the country. And that is what happened during the NLC, the National Liberation Council, Ankar's regime. They devaluated the currency, and it led to high cost of living. And still, it is being done here by the Busia government. In 1971, 27 December, they decided to devaluate the currency by 43.8% against the US dollar. And this, they said, was going to restore balance to the economy, to control inflation, stimulate new investment, and boost industrial production. That is what the PP government hoped to achieve. However, this policy came with it economic hardship to consumers, especially to workers, who were in the private sector. Again, production levels in the industries also started to decline, and then this affected employment and also wages. A lot of people were laid off because the cost of production was now high, because these imported goods were now, were now very expensive because of the devaluation of the currency. And this also led to a sharp increase in the prices of basic consumer goods and services. So like I indicated earlier, a country who imports basic commodities, basic consumer goods from outside, and you devaluate your currency, this is what will happen. The little thing on the market is even going to, for the price is even going to increase. So this also came with it, all these kind of hardship, and that also added to the unpopularity of the PP government. PP government. I think we can look at the last two, then we'll bring our discussion to an end. Of course, corruption has been the order of the day, and it has been part of all the reasons why all the various governments that came to power were overthrown. And even today, we still talk about corruption. And so I will not talk much about corruption because, there are so many things about corruption. So let's move on from corruption, which was also a reason for the fall of Busia, and talk about the grievances of the army. And this will perhaps be the most important, if not the best, but the most important, of course, reason. What happened was that Busia also incurred the wrath of the army when it slashed, the military budget as a measure of solving the dire economic situation in the country. Remember, the country was facing very dire economic, like today, as we are facing. You can feel the hardship today. When you bought a car, you can feel it. When you are buying even bread, you can feel the hardship because everything has increased, and that's the same kind of situation the country was faced. And so, in Busia trying to resolve that, he slashed the military, of course, budgets. What happened was that this measure denied the army of some of the benefits which the army had been enjoying under the Nkrumah regime. So under Nkrumah regime, the army had been enjoying quite a number of benefits. Examples where they had free electricity, they had free rent accommodation, free, of course, telephone services, and certain allowances. All these things were slashed away by the PP in a bid to maybe keep the money in the system. And don't forget, if you were a soldier at that time, I'm not sure that you would love this to happen, because don't forget, these same armed forces were the ones who overthrew Kwame Nkrumah, who was giving them all these despite the economic hardship and challenges. However, we have overthrown Nkrumah and you have been installed as a president, and then you come and you take away all these allowances. So you realize that Acheampong in his press told the public that Busia started to take from the army, and that demoralized the army, and they couldn't do the kind of work that they were supposed to do. And so this contributed, this and many other reasons that we have talked about contributed to the fall of the PP government, or Busia's government. Good. I hope we have had a nice time. This is a trial hand. This is a WASI 2011. I think this was my year, of course, WASI, and I think I happened to answer this question. Why was the Progress Party government overthrown in January 1972? You can mention any of the five, or any five of the points that we have talked about today. Thank you very much. Subscribe to our channel, and then also share and comment. And if you have any other lesson you may also want us to look at, you can just comment under the comment section, and I'll be happy to do that for you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
HISGOV TV, first among equals. Bye.